Are you having a hard time figuring out what to get Dad for Father's Day? You should check out Row 1 Brand's Vintage Pictorum Gallery. They have America's best sports art. With over 7,200 historic sports prints, you're assured to find something unique for Dad this Father's Day. Instead of a boring old tie, get him a historic baseball photo taken by Henry High Sandham at the historic Polo Grounds Stadium in New York City during the 1894 Temple Cup. Or, if he's an NFL buff, check out the 1963 vintage NFL poster. These are so good looking that you'll be amazed how they turn out. Shop now at sportshistorynetwork.com/row1 and save 15% off your order.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
It's time for some more sports history using the uniform and jersey numbers of the players for January 24th. And our numbers today are 42, 16, and 22. See how they made history in just a moment. Hello, sports friends. This is Darren Hayes, and you've heard my voice many times on the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch podcast. Well, now I'm starting a new endeavor. A mission of learning about other sports and other great players and histories of those sports. And I'm on a mission to learn through the apparel that they wore. That's right, the Sports Jersey Dispatch podcast is taking you through sports history through the uniforms, sweaters, and jerseys, the numbers of the players that wore them, all coming to you through some great experts and some great expert writing that we're going to go together and learn about the history of sports on the Sports Jersey Dispatch, a daily podcast from your friends at the Pigskin Dispatch. Let's talk a little bit about sports history January 24th. You know, sports history is made every day of the year, and we'll preserve it at least a small sampling with some great athletes of the day by their jersey number that they wore. First, let's talk about 42. It's the most famous 42 in sports history, Jackie Robinson. He became the highest paid Brooklyn Dodger on January 24th, 1950, to that point in history when he signed a $35,000 contract for the 1950 season. And while we're on the subject of Jackie Robinson, on January 24th, 1962, he was also selected as the first black man to be enshrined in a Baseball Hall of Fame on that day, an important date in history for number 42 on two different occasions, 1950 and 1962. Now let's go to number 16, January 24th, 1982. 16 of the San Francisco 49ers was Joe Montana, and he was selected as the Super Bowl 26 most valuable player that day, right after he and the Niners knocked off the Cincinnati Bengals 26-21 in the big game. Number 22 of the day belongs to Mike Bossy, who on January 24th, 1986, with the New York Islanders, scored his 1,000th NHL career point on this day. And now let's go to some great sports history with one of my friends on their favorite jersey number and player.
Hello, Darren. Thanks for the opportunity for me to share a little bit about my favorite number, number 12. This is John Davis, host of the For the Good of the Game podcast. You can find our podcast on all the major streaming services or at our website at forthegoodofthegame.com and on YouTube by the same name. We're also part of the Sports History Network. Darren, my number 12 was worn by Roger Staubach of the Dallas Cowboys. I grew up in the North Dallas area playing football at J.J. Pierce High School in North Dallas or in Richardson. And, Staubach's career was at its height during my high school. So I was, very blessed to be able to wear number 12 when I was in high school. Although I certainly couldn't come close to emulating the type of athlete he was, it was always cool to be able to watch him and know that we shared that number. Roger had a really neat career. He came out of high school in Cincinnati. He attended New Mexico Military Institute for a year. I was blessed to be able to visit NEMI with my youngest son. We saw the little shrine that they had to his, with his jersey and helmet in it. That was kind of cool. He then went to the Naval Academy, where besides breaking a ton of records, he also won the Heisman Trophy and a slew of other awards prior to going off to Vietnam for a year and then coming back and starting his career with the Dallas Cowboys. He played for Dallas for 11 years and won 2 Super Bowls, was the Super Bowl MVP one time, was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame as well as the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The only reason he stopped playing at 79 was because, based on medical advice from his doctors, he had had enough concussions that he was more concerned about his long-term health. And it was a sad day for me and for a lot of people when he turned down the Cowboys contract extension and retired. An interesting story, when we were kids, my sister was in a dance class with Roger Staubach's daughter, Jennifer. So my mom knew where they lived. And one weekend in the off season, we were out driving around and we drove down their street and I wasn't really paying attention. At one point, my dad slams the brakes on and Roger was out in the yard playing with the kids and either the ball or frisbee they were tossing had gone in the street and he ran out to get it. Well, my dad stopped quite a ways back from him. He reacted. He was actually a lot further off than he originally perceived. And Roger turned and waved to the family and then went back up. We didn't even stop and talk to him. Well, my dad stayed there for a second with his foot on the brake and dropped his hands in his lap. And he took a deep breath and glanced around at our family and said, "Can you imagine being the guy in Dallas, Texas, who ran over Roger Staubach?" He goes, "I'd have been dead before the next game." And listen to that and thinking about that story still brings a chuckle. So that's my interesting story about number 12 and why I wore 12 in high school as a tribute to my favorite player, Roger Staubach of the Dallas Cowboys. Darren, thanks again for being able to share a little bit about my favorite number. And for all those listening, I hope you'll check out the Sports History Network for the good of the game. And until next time, take care and God bless.
Hey, John, thanks a God. That was a great story about Captain Comeback, Roger Staubach. And make sure you check out John's podcast on Sports History Network, like he mentioned. For the good of the game, great podcast that has some great values that can teach all of us, and it gives you a little bit of perspective from a little bit more of a coaching aspect on how these coaches are dealing with player issues and getting parents and players to want to play the game of football. Great job by John, as always, for the good of the game on a Sports History Network. And it really educates me in this endeavor I have to learn more about sports history and the players and the uniforms that they wore. So I'm glad that John was able to share that with his story, a little bit about Roger Staubach, one of his great heroes from the Dallas Cowboys. And we want you and encourage you to share your stories with us. If you have a story you'd like to put on this daily podcast of the Jersey Dispatch, please email me at pigskinddispatch@gmail.com, and we'll make sure that we get something set up so you can share your story about your favorite player, uniform, or jersey on a future episode. Till tomorrow, everybody, have a great day and sports history. We're dribbling around and see the shot clock's almost out, so we got to put up our shot and come back tomorrow for some more great sports history. We invite you to check out our websites, jerseydispatch.com and pigskinddispatch.com. Not only see the daily sports history, but to experience the preservation of great events and people that play the games. Find us on Pigskin Dispatch. It's also on social media outlets of Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all your daily sports history. Pigskin Dispatch is happy to be associated with the Sports History Network, the sports headquarters of yesteryear, found at sportshistorynetwork.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.